The scene opens with a man sitting on a worn-out bench in the middle of a bustling city park. The camera doesn't linger on his face immediately. Instead, it focuses on the details around him. A crumpled paper cup sits at his feet, half filled with coins and a few dollar bills. The faint sound of laughter from children playing nearby contrasts sharply with the heaviness in his posture. His clothes are faded, patched together in places, and his shoes, once sturdy leather, are now cracked and frayed at the edges. He stares into the distance, not really seeing anything, but lost in a world of memories that seem to haunt him more than comfort him. This man is John Carter. To the people who pass by him every day, he's just another faceless figure, part of the urban landscape they've learned to ignore. But behind those tired eyes lies a story far richer and far more tragic than anyone could imagine. John wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, he had a life many would envy. He grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew each other by name. His father was a mechanic and his mother worked as a nurse. They weren't rich, but they were happy. John excelled in school, particularly in mathematics, which became his passion early on. Numbers made sense to him in ways that people sometimes didn't. By the time he graduated high school, he had already won several awards for his problem-solving skills and was offered a full scholarship to study engineering at a prestigious university. College was a turning point for John. It wasn't just about academics. It was where he met Sarah, the woman who would later become his wife. She was studying education, passionate about teaching young minds and shaping the future. Their relationship blossomed quickly, built on mutual respect and shared dreams. After graduation, John landed a job as a math teacher at a local public school while Sarah pursued her dream of becoming an elementary school teacher. Life seemed perfect. They bought a modest house, adopted a dog named Max, and started planning for a family. For years, everything went according to plan. John loved teaching. He found joy in helping students unlock the mysteries of algebra and calculus, watching their faces light up when they finally understood a concept. Sarah thrived in her classroom too, known for her patience and creativity. Together they built a life filled with purpose and love. Even when challenges arose, like the occasional difficult student or budget cuts at the school, they faced them side by side, confident that they could overcome anything together. But life has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. The first crack appeared when Sarah was diagnosed with lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease that left her weak and often bedridden. Medical bills piled up faster than they could pay them off, despite both working tirelessly. John took on extra tutoring jobs after school, sometimes staying up until midnight preparing lessons for struggling students. Still, it wasn't enough. The financial strain began to wear on their marriage, creating tensions neither of them knew how to resolve. Then came the layoffs. Budget cuts hit the school district hard, and John was one of the first teachers let go. At first, he tried to stay positive, sending out resumes and attending interviews. But the rejection letters kept coming, and the savings account dwindled to almost nothing. Desperation set in. He applied for any job he could find, regardless of whether it matched his qualifications. Some days he felt like he was drowning, unable to catch his breath no matter how hard he tried. The breaking point came when Sarah filed for divorce. It wasn't out of malice or anger. It was simply exhaustion. She couldn't bear to watch John sacrifice himself for her anymore, and she felt guilty knowing that her illness was dragging them both down. "You deserve better," she told him during one of their last conversations. "I can't keep being the reason you're unhappy." Those words haunted him long after she moved out, leaving behind an empty house that echoed with silence. Without Sarah, John's world unraveled completely. He stopped taking care of himself, skipping meals, and neglecting basic hygiene. Friends tried to reach out, but he pushed them away, ashamed of what he'd become. Eventually, he lost the house to foreclosure and ended up living in his car. When the car broke down beyond repair, he had nowhere else to go but the streets. Now here he is, sitting on that park bench, a shadow of the man he once was. Passers-by glance at him briefly before looking away, uncomfortable with the reminder of how fragile life can be. Children laugh in the background, oblivious to the weight of his gaze. For John, every day is a battle, not just against hunger or cold, but against despair. He wonders if anyone would even notice if he disappeared tomorrow. And yet, buried deep beneath the layers of pain and regret, there's still a spark of hope. It's faint, barely noticeable, but it's there. Maybe it's the memory of Sarah's smile or the satisfaction he used to feel when a student finally grasped a difficult equation. Whatever it is, it keeps him going, one day at a time. Little does he know, however, that his life is about to change in ways he never imagined. Because fate has a peculiar way of intervening when we least expect it. And soon, John will find himself standing face to face with someone whose name is synonymous with wealth, ambition, and innovation, a man whose response to a simple question will alter the course of John's life forever. The park where John spends most of his days is usually a blur of activity. Dog walkers chatting animatedly, joggers weaving through the paths, and families picnicking under the shade of towering oak trees. But today feels different. There's an unusual energy in the air, a subtle buzz that seems to ripple through the crowd. At first, John doesn't pay much attention. He's used to tuning out the world around him, retreating into the cocoon of his own thoughts. But then he hears it, a name whispered like a secret, passed from one person to another. Is that Elon Musk? John looks up instinctively, his gaze scanning the area. Sure enough, there he is, walking casually along the path as if he belongs, here among the ordinary people. It's strange to see someone so larger than life in such an unassuming setting. Musk isn't surrounded by bodyguards or cameras. He's alone, dressed in a simple black jacket and jeans, his hands shoved into his pockets. He moves with purpose but without urgency, occasionally nodding at curious onlookers who recognize him. For a moment, John just stares. He's seen Musk's face countless times on TV and online, the billionaire entrepreneur known for revolutionizing industries, pushing humanity toward Mars, and sparking debates with his bold ideas. To John, Musk has always seemed untouchable, existing in a realm far removed from the struggles of everyday life. Yet, here he is, mere feet away, looking almost human. Something stirs within John, a mix of disbelief, curiosity, and desperation. His mind races with questions. What is Musk doing here? Does he even realize how out of place he seems? And more importantly, could this be an opportunity? An idea begins to form in John's head, tentative at first but growing stronger with each passing second. He hesitates, torn between fear and hope. Approaching someone like Musk feels absurd, almost laughable. What could he possibly say? Would Musk even acknowledge him? The rational part of John's brain tells him to stay seated to avoid embarrassment. But another voice, a quieter, more insistent one, urges him to take a chance. After all, what does he have to lose? Summoning every ounce of courage he can. Muster. John stands up. His legs feel shaky, unsteady after hours of sitting still. He brushes off his worn coat, straightens his posture as best he can, and takes a deep breath. Slowly, he steps forward, weaving through the crowd until he's standing directly in Musk's path. Musk notices him immediately. He stops walking and tilts his head slightly, regarding John with an expression that's neither judgmental nor dismissive. It's neutral, open, a blank canvas waiting to be painted. For a brief moment, John falters. Doubt creeps in, whispering cruel reminders of his current state. Who is he to approach someone like this? A nobody, a failure, a man who can't even afford a decent meal. But then he remembers why he's here. This isn't about pride or ego. It's about survival. Summoning the last remnants of his dignity, John clears his throat and speaks. "Mr. Musk," he says, his voice trembling but audible, "can you spare $2?" The words hang in the air, heavy with vulnerability. Time seems to slow down as Musk processes the request. Around them, the park continues its usual rhythm, children laughing, leaves rustling, but for John, everything else fades into the background. All he can focus on is Musk's reaction. At first, there's silence. Musk doesn't respond right away. Instead, he studies John intently, his piercing gaze seeming to peel back layers of pretense and expose the raw truth beneath. John feels exposed, stripped bare under that scrutiny. He wonders if Musk sees him as just another beggar, another statistic in a city full of broken dreams. Then something unexpected happens. Musk smiles, not the kind of polite, obligatory smile people give when they're trying to be nice, but a genuine, almost amused grin. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a few bills, and hands them to John. But instead of simply walking away, he does something remarkable. "You know," Musk says, his tone conversational yet thoughtful, "$2 won't change your life, but maybe we can do better than that." John blinks, unsure if he heard correctly. "What do you mean?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Musk gestures toward a nearby bench. "Let's sit down and talk. Tell me your story." For a moment, John is too stunned to move. This isn't how these encounters are supposed to go. Rich people don't stop to listen to homeless men. They don't offer more than spare change. And they certainly don't invite strangers to sit beside them and share their lives. Yet here Musk is, extending an invitation that feels both surreal and profoundly meaningful. They settle onto the bench side by side. Musk leans back slightly, his posture relaxed, but attentive. John, on the other hand, sits rigidly, clutching the money in his hand like it might disappear if he lets go. He doesn't know where to start. How do you condense years of pain, loss, and struggle into a coherent narrative? How do you make someone like Musk understand what it's like to live on the margins of society? "I'm John," he begins hesitantly. "I used to be a teacher, math mostly. I loved it. I loved helping kids figure things out, but things fell apart. My wife got sick, I lost my job, and eventually I lost everything." As he talks, the words come easier. He tells Musk about Sarah, about the medical bills that drained their savings, about the layoffs that left him scrambling for work. He talks about the divorce, the foreclosure, the night spent sleeping in his car before it broke down. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He lays it all out there, raw and unfiltered. Throughout the conversation, Musk listens intently. He doesn't interrupt or offer platitudes. Instead, he nods occasionally, his expression thoughtful. When John finally falls silent, exhausted from reliving his past, Musk speaks again. "That's quite a journey," he says quietly. "And you've been carrying it all on your own." John nods, unsure of what else to say. He expects Musk to stand up, thank him for sharing, and leave. That would be the logical conclusion to this bizarre encounter. But Musk surprises him once more. "What if I told you," Musk continues, his tone measured but firm, "that I can help you turn things around, not just with money, but with real opportunities? Would you be willing to try?" John's heart skips a beat. Is this some kind of joke? A publicity stunt? Or is Musk serious? He searches the billionaire's face for any sign of mockery or insincerity, but finds none. All he sees is genuine interest and a glimmer of determination. I don't know what to say," John admits, his voice cracking. "Why would you want to help me?" Musk shrugs, as if the answer is obvious. "Because everyone deserves a second chance, because talent shouldn't go to waste, and because—" He pauses, his gaze drifting momentarily to the horizon. "Because I've been in dark places too. I know what it's like to feel like the odds are stacked against you." The sincerity in Musk's voice hits John like a punch to the gut. For the first time in years, He allows himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. That maybe this chance encounter isn't just a fleeting moment of kindness, but the beginning of something transformative as they continue. Talking, the initial awkwardness melts away, replaced by a sense of connection that neither of them anticipated. By the time they part ways, John feels lighter, as though a weight he'd been carrying for years has been lifted, if only slightly. He doesn't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, he dares to hope as John walks. Away from the park bench, his mind swirling with a mix of disbelief and cautious optimism, the narrative shifts. We leave behind the quiet desperation of John's world for a moment and step into the whirlwind that is Elon Musk's life, a life defined by audacity, resilience, and an unrelenting drive to push boundaries. To truly understand why Musk responded to John the way he did, we must first delve into his own story, one marked by its own share of struggles and triumphs. Elon Musk wasn't born into privilege, far from it. He grew up in Pretoria, South Africa, in a household fraught with tension. His parents divorced when he was young, and while his mother, May, was loving and supportive, his relationship with his father, Errol, was complicated at best. Errol Musk was a man of contradictions, charismatic yet domineering, brilliant yet emotionally distant. Elon often described him as a terrible human being, though he rarely elaborated on the specifics. What is clear, however, is that those early years left scars that would shape Musk's worldview in profound ways. From a young age, Elon exhibited traits that set him apart. He was intensely curious, devouring books at a pace that baffled his peers. By the time he was 10, he had taught himself computer programming and sold his first video game, a rudimentary space-themed title called Blastar, for $500. But intellectual brilliance came at a cost. Elon was bullied mercilessly in school, enduring physical and emotional torment that left him withdrawn and distrustful of others. Those experiences instilled in him a fierce independence and a deep-seated belief that survival depended on self-reliance. When Elon turned 17, he made the bold decision to leave South Africa and move to Canada, where his mother's family lived. It was a risky move, driven by a desire to escape mandatory military service under apartheid and a hunger for something greater. He arrived with little more than a suitcase and a dream, working odd jobs to make ends meet. For a time, he lived off less than $1 a day, subsisting on hot dogs and oranges, because they were the cheapest foods he could find. Those lean years taught him the value of resourcefulness and reinforced his belief that hardship could be overcome with sheer willpower. Eventually, Elon transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied physics and economics. It was during this period that his entrepreneurial spirit began to take root. Alongside his brother Kimball, he launched Zip2, a software company that provided business directories and maps for newspapers. The venture was far from glamorous. The brothers worked out of a small office, sleeping on a futon and showering at the local YMCA. Yet their perseverance paid off. In 1999, Compaq acquired Zip2 for nearly $300 million, making Elon an overnight millionaire at the age of 28. But success didn't come without setbacks. After selling Zip2, Elon co-founded X.com, an online payment company that would eventually evolve into PayPal. However, internal conflicts led to his ousting as CEO, a blow that could have derailed anyone else. Instead, Elon channeled his frustration into ambition, doubling down on his vision for the future. When eBay purchased PayPal for $1.5 billion in 2002, Elon walked away with $165 million, enough capital to pursue his most ambitious projects yet, SpaceX and Tesla. Both ventures were gambles of epic proportions. SpaceX aimed to reduce the cost of space travel and ultimately enable humanity to become a multiplanetary species, a goal many dismissed as science fiction. Meanwhile, Tesla sought to revolutionize the automotive industry by proving that electric cars could be both desirable and sustainable. Skeptics abounded, and failure loomed large. In 2008, during the global financial crisis, both companies teetered on the brink of collapse. Elon poured his last remaining funds into keeping them afloat, mortgaging his own assets and living paycheck to paycheck. It was a dark chapter, one that tested his resolve like never before. Yet somehow, against all odds, he persevered. SpaceX successfully launched its Falcon 1 rocket, becoming the first privately funded company to send a liquid-fueled vehicle into orbit. Tesla unveiled the Roadster, proving that electric vehicles could compete with traditional sports cars in terms of performance and style. These milestones not only saved Musk's businesses, but also cemented his reputation as a visionary leader, willing to bet everything on his convictions. Despite his meteoric rise, Musk remains a polarizing figure. To some, he's a hero, a modern-day Prometheus bringing fire to humanity in the form of technological innovation. To others, he's a reckless egomaniac whose grandiose promises often outpace reality. Critics point to his erratic behavior on social media, his tendency to overpromise and underdeliver, and his sometimes abrasive management style. Supporters counter that his flaws are outweighed by his contributions to society, arguing that no one else has done more to accelerate the transition to renewable energy or advance the cause of space exploration. What few people realize, however, is that beneath the bravado lies a deeply introspective individual. Musk has spoken candidly about his struggles with depression, describing moments when the weight of his responsibilities felt unbearable. He once admitted in an interview that he often works 80 100-hour weeks not because he enjoys it, but because he believes the fate of humanity depends on his efforts. This sense of duty, to leave the world better than he found it, is what drives him, even when the odds seem insurmountable. It's this duality, the public persona versus the private man, that makes Musk such a fascinating character. On the surface, he appears invincible, a force of nature who bends reality to his will. But scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find someone who understands pain, loss, and uncertainty all too well. Perhaps that's why he connected so deeply with John Carter. Despite their vastly different circumstances, they share a common thread, the knowledge that life can unravel in an instant, leaving you to pick up the pieces as best you can. For Musk, helping John isn't just an act of charity, it's a reflection of his own journey. He knows what it's like to start with nothing, to face ridicule and rejection, and to claw your way back from the brink. He sees in John a kindred spirit, someone who hasn't given up despite overwhelming odds. And while Musk may not admit it openly, there's a part of him that recognizes how fragile success can be. One wrong decision, one twist of fate, and even the wealthiest among us can find ourselves staring into the abyss. This understanding informs his response to John. It's not pity that motivates him, it's empathy. Musk doesn't see John as a homeless man asking for spare change. He sees a former teacher, a husband, a person with skills and potential that have been buried under layers of misfortune. He envisions a path forward, one where John's talents can be reignited and redirected toward meaningful work. Whether it's offering him a position within one of his companies, funding a new educational initiative, or simply providing mentorship, Musk views this encounter as an opportunity to create real, lasting impact. As the sun sets over the park, casting long shadows across the grass, Musk lingers on the bench for a few moments longer. He watches as John disappears into the crowd, his silhouette blending seamlessly with the other pedestrians. A faint smile plays on Musk's lips, not one of satisfaction, but of quiet resolve. He knows that helping John won't solve the systemic issues that lead to homelessness or poverty, but he also knows that every great movement begins with a single step. And today, he took one. The encounter between John Carter and Elon Musk didn't end with a simple exchange of money or even a heartfelt conversation. It evolved into something far more profound, a moment that would ripple outward, touching lives beyond just the two men involved. As Musk sat on that park bench, his mind began racing with possibilities. This wasn't about charity, it was about opportunity. And for someone like Musk, who has always viewed problems as puzzles waiting to be solved, the challenge of helping John rebuild his life became an irresistible proposition. Musk leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees as he turned to face John. His expression softened, but there was a spark of determination in his eyes, a look that suggested he was already formulating a plan. "John," he said, his voice steady and deliberate, "I want you to think about this not as a handout, but as a partnership. You've got skills that are valuable, even if you've forgotten how to see them that way. What if we could put those skills to use again?" John blinked, caught off guard by the suggestion. "A partnership," he echoed, his voice tinged with skepticism. "What kind of partnership are we talking about here? I'm not exactly in a position to contribute much." Musk chuckled softly, shaking his head. "That's where you're wrong. You're underestimating yourself. Let me ask you something. Do you still enjoy teaching? Do you miss it?" The question hit John like a thunderclap. Of course he missed teaching. It had been the cornerstone of his identity for so long. But admitting that felt dangerous, like opening a wound he'd spent years trying to heal. He hesitated before answering, his gaze dropping to the ground. "Yeah," he murmured finally. "I do miss it. Teaching gave me purpose. It made me feel like I was making a difference, but that was a different life. Things are different now." "They don't have to be," Musk replied firmly. "Look, I run several companies, and one thing I've learned is that talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. You clearly have talent. You were a teacher, which means you know how to communicate complex ideas, inspire people, and solve problems. Those are rare skills, John, skills that can be applied in ways you might not have considered." John frowned, trying to process what Musk was saying. "But what could I possibly offer to someone like you? Your companies deal with rockets, cars, solar energy. None of that has anything to do with math or teaching." Musk smiled, leaning back against the bench. "You'd be surprised. Education is at the heart of everything we do. Whether it's training engineers to build spacecraft or educating consumers about sustainable energy, knowledge is our most powerful tool. And right now, we're working on initiatives to expand access to STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for underserved communities. We need people who understand how to teach these subjects effectively. People like you." For a moment, John was speechless. The idea of returning to teaching, even in a new context, felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Could he really step back into that role after everything he'd been through? Would anyone trust him, given his current circumstances? Doubt swirled in his mind, threatening to drown out Musk's words. Sensing John's hesitation, Musk pressed on. "Listen, I'm not asking you to jump into this blindly. I'm offering you a chance to start over, to take the pieces of your life and rebuild them into something meaningful. If you're willing to commit, I'll provide the resources you need: housing, healthcare, job training, whatever it takes to get you back on your feet. In return, I expect you to give this your all. No excuses, no half measures. Deal?" The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. John stared at Musk, searching for any sign of insincerity or hidden agendas, but all he saw was genuine conviction, the same unwavering belief in possibility that had driven Musk to achieve the impossible time and again. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, John nodded. "Deal," he whispered, his voice barely audible, but filled with resolve. Musk extended his hand, and after a brief pause, John shook it. The gesture felt symbolic, like sealing a pact not just between two individuals, but between two versions of themselves, the broken and the hopeful, the lost. and the Found. For John, it marked the beginning of a journey he hadn't dared to imagine. For Musk, it was another step toward fulfilling a personal mission, using his wealth and influence to create opportunities where they're needed most. As they parted ways, Musk pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Within minutes, a sleek black car arrived to pick John up. The driver introduced himself politely and explained that he'd be taking John to a nearby hotel, where arrangements had already been made for temporary accommodation. Overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, John climbed into the car, clutching the few belongings he carried with him. As the vehicle pulled away, he glanced back at Musk, who stood watching from the park bench. Their eyes met briefly, and in that fleeting moment, John felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Meanwhile, Musk returned to his own world, a whirlwind of meetings, deadlines, and decisions. But the encounter stayed with him, lingering in the corners of his mind like a melody he couldn't shake. Later that evening, as he reviewed emails and strategized with his team, he found himself reflecting on the conversation. There was something about John's story that resonated deeply with him, perhaps because it mirrored aspects of his own journey. Both men had faced adversity, though in vastly different forms. Both had experienced loss and uncertainty, yet refused to surrender entirely. And both understood on some fundamental level that resilience is born not from avoiding hardship, but from confronting it head-on. Over the next few days, Musk followed up on his promise. He reached out to contacts within his network, coordinating efforts to ensure John received the support he needed. A team was assembled to assess John's situation comprehensively, addressing not only his immediate needs, but also his long-term goals. They enrolled him in a program designed to help individuals transition back into stable employment, pairing him with mentors who specialized in career development and mental health counseling. Meanwhile, Musk personally oversaw the creation of a new educational initiative aimed at providing STEM resources to marginalized communities, a project inspired in part by his conversation with John. For John, the weeks that followed were a blur of activity and emotion. At first, adjusting to his new environment proved challenging. The comfort of a warm bed and regular meals felt foreign, almost surreal. Simple tasks like grocery shopping or filling out paperwork seemed overwhelming after years of survival mode. But gradually, with the guidance of his mentors, he began to adapt. He attended workshops on modern teaching methods, learning how to integrate technology into lesson plans and engage students in interactive ways. He participated in group sessions with other participants in the program, sharing stories and exchanging advice. For the first, everyone around him treated him not as a failure, but as someone capable of growth and change. One particularly transformative experience came during a visit to a SpaceX facility. Musk had arranged for John to tour the site, hoping to inspire him with a glimpse of what humanity could achieve when ambition met innovation. As John walked among the towering rockets and cutting-edge laboratories, he felt a sense of awe he hadn't experienced since his days as a teacher. The engineers and technicians welcomed him warmly, eager to explain their work and answer his questions. By the end of the day, John realized that teaching wasn't just about imparting knowledge. It was about igniting curiosity, fostering creativity, and empowering others to dream bigger than they ever thought possible. Back at the hotel, John spent hours journaling about his experiences, pouring his thoughts onto paper as a way of processing everything he'd seen and felt. He wrote about the kindness of strangers, the complexity of Musk's vision, and the daunting yet exhilarating prospect of starting over. Each entry served as a reminder that he wasn't alone, that there were people rooting for him, believing in his potential even when he struggled to believe in himself. By the time John moved into permanent housing, a modest apartment provided through the program, he had begun to envision a future that once seemed unimaginable. He imagined himself standing in front of a classroom again, this time equipped with tools and techniques that reflected the latest advancements in education. He pictured himself mentoring young minds, helping them navigate challenges similar to those he had faced. Most importantly, he envisioned a version of himself restored, not to who he used to be, but to someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And as for Musk, the impact of their encounter extended beyond John's individual transformation. It reinforced his belief in the power of second chances and the importance of investing in human potential. In interviews and public appearances, he spoke passionately about the need to address systemic inequalities, advocating for policies that prioritized education, healthcare, and economic mobility. Critics accused him of grandstanding, dismissing his efforts as mere publicity stunts. Supporters praised him for leveraging his platform to drive meaningful change. Either way, the story of John Carter and Elon Musk continued to resonate, sparking conversations about privilege, responsibility, and the role of individuals in shaping a better future. It began with a single smartphone, a device held by a young woman named Emily who happened to be jogging through the park that day. She had noticed Elon Musk walking along the path, recognized him instantly, and slowed her pace to observe from a distance. When she saw him stop to speak with John Carter, curiosity got the better of her. Pulling out her phone, she discreetly filmed the interaction, capturing snippets of their conversation without fully understanding its significance. At first, it was just a fleeting moment of intrigue, a billionaire talking to a homeless man. But as the exchange unfolded, something about it struck a chord within her. There was an authenticity to the encounter, a raw humanity that transcended the usual spectacle of celebrity sightings. Without overthinking it, Emily uploaded the video to her social media account, adding a caption that read, "Elon Musk just gave a homeless man more than money." Watch this. Within hours, the clip went viral. At first, the reaction was muted, just a few likes and comments from Emily's friends and followers. But then someone shared it on Twitter, tagging Elon Musk himself. From there, the story exploded. News outlets picked it up, framing it as everything from a heartwarming act of kindness to a calculated PR move. Memes flooded the internet, some mocking Musk's intentions, others celebrating his generosity. Talk show hosts debated whether the encounter was genuine or staged, while armchair analysts dissected every word of the brief dialogue captured on camera. By the end of the week, Elon and John was trending worldwide, sparking discussions about wealth inequality, corporate responsibility, and the ethics of philanthropy. For John Carter, the sudden attention was overwhelming. He had no idea the conversation had been recorded until a member of Musk's team informed him the next morning. Sitting in his temporary housing, staring at the notifications pinging on the borrowed phone they'd provided, he felt a mix of emotions: shock, embarrassment, gratitude, and fear. People were talking about him, not just as the homeless guy, but as someone worthy of compassion and respect. Strangers sent messages of encouragement, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. Others criticized him, accusing him of exploiting Musk for fame or fortune. The dichotomy was dizzying, leaving John unsure of how to navigate this newfound visibility. Meanwhile, Elon Musk found himself at the center of yet another media storm. For someone accustomed to controversy, this particular situation was unique. Unlike previous incidents where his actions had sparked outrage or ridicule, the public response to his encounter with John was overwhelmingly positive, at least initially. Supporters hailed him as a modern-day Robin Hood, using his vast resources to uplift those in need. Critics, however, remained skeptical, questioning whether the gesture was motivated by altruism or self-interest. Some accused him of performative activism, arguing that helping one person did little to address the systemic issues underlying homelessness and poverty. Others pointed out that Musk's net worth could fund countless similar initiatives if he chose to allocate his wealth differently. Despite the mixed reactions, Musk leaned into the narrative. In a series Act O of Rare Vulnerability, he posted, A thread on X, formerly Twitter, reflecting on the encounter and its broader implications. "I didn't set out to make headlines," he wrote. "I simply saw a man asking for help and decided to listen. What I found was someone with untapped potential, someone whose life circumstances had overshadowed his abilities. This isn't about charity. It's about opportunity. If we can empower people like John to rebuild their lives, imagine what else is possible." The post resonated deeply, garnering millions of views and reigniting the global conversation. It also prompted a wave of imitators, with other wealthy individuals and corporations announcing their own initiatives to combat homelessness and unemployment. Some efforts were sincere, others reeked of opportunism. Regardless, the ripple effect was undeniable. Nonprofits reported a surge in donations, shelters saw increased volunteer turnout, and policymakers began discussing legislative changes to address the root causes of homelessness. For better or worse, the story of John Carter and Elon Musk had become a catalyst for change, but amidst the chaos, John struggled to find his footing. The constant scrutiny made it difficult to focus on the program designed to help him transition back into stable employment. Every trip outside his apartment felt like stepping onto a stage, with passers-by recognizing him and whispering behind his back. Journalists camped outside his building, hoping for an exclusive interview. Social media trolls dissected every aspect of his appearance and behavior, amplifying insecurities he thought he'd left behind. At times, he wondered if accepting Musk's offer had been a mistake, if the price of redemption was too high. Fortunately, the support system around him proved invaluable. His mentors encouraged him to take breaks when needed, reminding him that healing was a process, not a destination. They helped him craft a statement addressing the public, emphasizing his gratitude for the opportunities he'd been given while acknowledging the challenges ahead. "I'm not looking for pity or praise," he wrote. "I'm just trying to rebuild my life, one step at a time. If my story inspires others to seek help or offer it, then maybe something good can come from all of this." The statement struck a chord, earning widespread praise for its honesty and humility. Slowly but surely, the frenzy began to die down. Reporters moved on to the next big story, and the online discourse shifted to other topics. For John, the reprieve was welcome, allowing him to refocus on the work that lay ahead. He threw himself into the program with renewed determination, attending workshops, networking with professionals in his field, and honing the skills he'd need to succeed in his new role. Each small victory, completing a certification course, delivering a successful presentation, receiving positive feedback from peers, reinforced his belief that he was capable of change. As the months passed, the narrative surrounding the encounter evolved. What had started as a viral moment became a case study in resilience and reinvention. Documentaries explored the intersection of privilege and poverty, examining how individuals like Musk could leverage their influence to drive social impact. Podcasts featured interviews with experts in education, economics, and psychology, analyzing the factors that contributed to John's downfall and subsequent recovery. Even Hollywood took notice, with producers pitching scripts based on the story. Through it all, John remained grounded, refusing to let the hype distract him from his goals. One particularly poignant development came when Musk invited John to speak at a conference hosted by one of his companies. The event brought together innovators, educators, and policymakers from around the world, all united by a shared commitment to solving humanity's greatest challenges. Standing on stage alongside Musk, John delivered a speech that left the audience in tears. He spoke candidly about his journey, the highs and lows, the lessons learned, and the hope he now carried for the future. "When I asked Mr. Musk for $2, he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "I never imagined he'd give me so much more. He gave me a chance to believe in myself again, and for that, I'll always be grateful." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing throughout the auditorium like a standing ovation for the human spirit. As John stepped off stage, Musk greeted him with a firm handshake and a nod of approval. For both men, the experience served as a reminder of why they had embarked on this journey in the first place. To prove that even in a world rife with division and despair, connection and compassion could still prevail as the dust began to settle around the whirlwind of media attention and public discourse sparked by John Carter's encounter with Elon Musk. A quieter, more introspective chapter of their story unfolded, one that delved into the motivations and personal histories that had shaped Musk's decision to intervene in such a profound way. While the world speculated about whether this was an act of genuine altruism or a calculated PR maneuver, the truth lay somewhere deeper, rooted in Musk's own experiences and worldview. To understand why Musk had gone beyond simply handing over $2, we must revisit his childhood, a time marked by both brilliance and adversity. Growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, Musk was no stranger to feeling like an outsider. His insatiable curiosity and intellectual precocity set him apart from his peers, earning him admiration from teachers, but also making him a target for bullies. He often returned home with bruises, his body bearing the physical scars of being different. But it was the emotional toll, the isolation, the loneliness that left the deepest marks. Those early years taught him resilience, yes, but they also instilled in him a keen awareness of how fragile human dignity can be when stripped away by circumstance or cruelty. This understanding of vulnerability became a cornerstone of Musk's personality, shaping not only his approach to business, but also his interactions with others. Despite his reputation as a hard-driving, sometimes ruthless entrepreneur, Musk has always harbored a soft spot for underdogs, those who, like him, have faced seemingly insurmountable odds and refused to give up. It's why he named one of SpaceX's Aiden rockets Falcon, after the bird known for its strength and perseverance despite adversity. And it's why, when he encountered John Carter in that park, something about the man resonated with him on a visceral level. But there was another layer to Musk's response, a more personal connection that few outside his inner circle knew about. Years earlier, during a particularly dark period in his life, Musk had found himself teetering on the edge of despair. The year was 2008, and both SpaceX and Tesla were on the brink of failure. After 3 consecutive unsuccessful launches, SpaceX was running out of funding, while Tesla struggled to meet production deadlines amid the global financial crisis. Musk poured every last penny of his fortune into keeping the companies afloat, mortgaging his properties, and living off loans just to keep the lights on. There were moments when he seriously considered giving up, convinced that he had gambled everything and lost. During that time, Musk confided in a close friend about the crushing weight of responsibility he felt, not just for himself, but for the hundreds of employees depending on him for their livelihoods. "I remember sitting in my kitchen late at night," he recounted, "wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. I thought about all the people who believed in me, who trusted me to lead them towards a better future. And I realized that quitting wasn't an option, not because I owed it to myself, but because I owed it to them." That experience left an indelible mark on Musk, reinforcing his belief in the power of second chances and the importance of perseverance. When he finally succeeded, SpaceX's 4th launch reaching orbit, Tesla securing critical investments, it felt like redemption, a validation of his refusal to surrender. From that point forward, Musk carried those lessons with him, applying them not only to his professional endeavors but also to his personal philosophy. He began to see setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities to learn, adapt, and grow stronger. It's this perspective that informed his decision to help John Carter. When Musk looked at John, he didn't see a homeless man. He saw someone who had been knocked down repeatedly, yet still clung to a shred of hope. He recognized the same stubborn determination that had carried him through his darkest days. And perhaps most importantly, he saw an opportunity to pay forward the kindness and support he had received during his own struggles. Musk's team later revealed that the billionaire had quietly sought advice from several experts before finalizing his plan for John. He consulted with psychologists specializing in trauma recovery, educators focused on workforce reintegration, and nonprofit leaders experienced in addressing homelessness. Their insights helped shape the comprehensive program designed to guide John back to stability, ensuring that the assistance provided was tailored to his specific needs rather than a one-size-fits-all solution. This meticulous approach underscored Musk's commitment to creating lasting impact rather than offering temporary relief. For John, these revelations came gradually, pieced together through conversations with his mentors and glimpses into Musk's past shared during their occasional check-ins. At first, he struggled to reconcile the image of Musk as a larger-than-life figure with the empathetic, almost vulnerable individual who had taken the time to listen to his story. But as he learned more about Musk's journey, the hardships, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt, he began to see him in a new light. Far from being untouchable, Musk was flawed, human, and deeply aware of the fragility of success. One evening, during a rare private meeting between the two men, John broached the subject directly. They were sitting in Musk's office, surrounded by models of rockets and electric cars, when John leaned forward and asked, "Why did you really do it? Why me?" Musk paused, considering the question carefully before responding. "Honestly," he said, his tone softer than usual, "because I've been where you are. Not literally, of course. I've never been homeless. But I know what it's like to feel like the world is against you, like no matter how hard you try, nothing seems to go right. And I know how easy it is to lose sight of your worth when everyone around you treats you like you don't matter." He paused again, his gaze fixed on the horizon visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "When I met you, I saw potential. I saw someone who hadn't given up, even when it would have been easier to let go. That's rare, John. Most people in your situation would have stopped believing in themselves long ago. But you're still fighting. And I wanted to remind you that the fight is worth it." John sat in silence for a moment, absorbing Musk's words. There was no grandiosity in his explanation, no attempt to frame the gesture as anything other than what it was, a deeply personal act of solidarity. For the first time, John fully understood the magnitude of what Musk had done, not just for him, but for anyone who might hear their story and find inspiration in it. The revelation strengthened their bond, transforming their relationship from one of benefactor and beneficiary into something more akin to allies. Musk continued to check in periodically, offering guidance and encouragement as John navigated the challenges of rebuilding his life. In turn, John shared updates on his progress, celebrating milestones and seeking advice when obstacles arose. Together, they embodied the idea that true mentorship is built on mutual respect and shared humanity, transcending the boundaries of wealth and status. Meanwhile, the public narrative surrounding their encounter shifted once again. As details of Musk's personal struggles emerged, shared sparingly through carefully curated interviews and statements, the media portrayal of him softened. Critics who had dismissed the gesture as self-serving were forced to reconsider their stance, acknowledging the sincerity behind his actions. Supporters hailed him as a model for how the ultra-wealthy could use their resources to effect meaningful change, urging others to follow suit. Yet, for all the external validation, the real measure of success lay in the transformation taking place within John himself. With each passing day, he grew more confident, more determined to reclaim the pieces of his identity that had been fractured by hardship. Teaching remained at the core of his aspirations, but now he envisioned it in broader terms, as a means of empowering others to overcome their own challenges. Inspired by Musk's vision of multi-planetary colonization, he dreamed of developing educational programs that prepared students for the realities of a rapidly changing world, equipping them with the skills and mindset needed to thrive in uncertain times. By the time John completed the program and secured a position as an instructor at a local community college, he had become a symbol of resilience in his own right. Students gravitated toward him, drawn not only by his expertise, but also by his authenticity. He spoke openly about his past, using his experiences to illustrate the importance of perseverance and self-belief. "Life will knock you down," he told them during one particularly memorable lecture. "It'll test you in ways you never thought possible. But here's the thing. You get to decide how you respond. You get to choose whether you let it define you or redefine you." The words resonated deeply, earning him praise from colleagues and administrators alike. Within months, he was invited to speak at conferences and workshops, sharing his story with audiences eager to learn from his journey. Each appearance reinforced his sense of purpose, reminding him that the ripple effects of Musk's intervention extended far beyond his own life. And so, as the chapter of viral fame faded into memory, a new one began, one defined not by headlines or hashtags, but by the quiet, steady work of rebuilding and reinvention. For John Carter, the road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but it was also filled with possibilities. Possibilities born not from luck or chance, but from the courage to ask for help and the grace to receive it. The months that followed John Carter's encounter with Elon Musk were a whirlwind of transformation, both external and internal. On the surface, his life underwent dramatic changes. He moved into stable housing, secured employment as an instructor, and began rebuilding relationships with family members he hadn't spoken to in years. But beneath these visible milestones lay a deeper, more profound shift, a reclamation of identity, purpose, and self-worth. For John, this period was not just about starting over. It was about rediscovering who he was and envisioning who he could become. At first, the transition felt surreal. After years of living on the streets, where survival was measured in hours rather than days, the stability offered by Musk's program seemed almost otherworldly. Waking up each morning in a clean, quiet apartment instead of a park bench or abandoned building took some getting used to. Simple pleasures, like cooking a meal, taking a hot shower, or sleeping in a bed without fear of being disturbed, felt like luxuries he didn't deserve. Guilt gnawed at him, a nagging voice whispering that he hadn't earned this second chance, that he was somehow unworthy of the opportunities unfolding before him. It was during one of his counseling sessions that John finally voiced these feelings to his therapist, Dr. Rachel Mendez, a compassionate woman with decades of experience helping individuals navigate trauma and recovery. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "Every time something good happens, part of me expects it to disappear, like it's all too fragile, too temporary." Dr. Mendez nodded thoughtfully, her expression calm but attentive. "That's completely normal, John," she said gently. "When you've spent so much of your life bracing for the worst, it can be hard to trust that things might actually work out. But here's the thing. You're not just passively receiving help, you're actively participating in your own healing. Every step you take, every effort you make, reinforces the fact that you do deserve this. You've earned it through your resilience, your willingness to try again." Her words struck a chord, planting a seed of hope that would grow stronger with time. Slowly, John began to internalize the idea that his worth wasn't contingent on his circumstances, that even at his lowest point, he had retained qualities worthy of respect and admiration. He started journaling regularly, documenting not only his progress, but also the moments of joy and gratitude that punctuated his days. Whether it was the laughter of students during a particularly engaging lesson, the warmth of sunlight streaming through his window, or the simple pleasure of sipping coffee while reading the newspaper, these small victories became anchors grounding him in the present. Teaching proved to be both a challenge and a lifeline. At first, stepping back into a classroom felt daunting. The last time John had stood in front of students, his life had been unraveling behind the scenes. Now, returning to that role required confronting memories he'd long suppressed. The pain of losing his job, the shame of financial ruin, the loneliness of watching his marriage crumble. But it also reignited a passion he thought he'd lost forever. As he prepared lessons, graded assignments, and engaged with curious minds eager to learn, he rediscovered the fulfillment that came from making a difference in others' lives. One particular student, a young woman named Maria, left an indelible mark on John. She was quiet and reserved, often sitting in the back of the class with her head down, avoiding eye contact. When John noticed her struggling with algebra, he approached her after class one day, offering extra tutoring sessions. At first, Maria hesitated, wary of accepting help. But over time, she opened up, revealing that she worked 2 part-time jobs to support her younger siblings while caring for their ailing mother. Her grades suffered because she rarely had time to study, yet she refused to give up on her dream of attending college. John saw pieces of himself in Maria, the determination to persevere despite overwhelming odds, the fear of failure tempered by a stubborn refusal to quit. He threw himself into mentoring her, providing not only academic guidance, but also emotional support. Together, they celebrated small victories, a passing grade on a difficult exam, an acceptance letter to a local university, and mourned setbacks when they occurred. By the end of the semester, Maria had not only improved her grades, but also gained confidence in her abilities. On the final day of class, she handed John a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. You changed my life." Moments like these reinforced John's sense of purpose, reminding him why he had chosen teaching in the first place. They also highlighted the cyclical nature of kindness, the way acts of compassion could ripple outward, touching lives in ways neither giver nor recipient might anticipate. Inspired by Maria's journey, John began volunteering with local nonprofits focused on education and workforce development, sharing his story and advocating for policies aimed at reducing barriers to opportunity. His advocacy caught the attention of community leaders, leading to invitations to speak at town halls, panel discussions, and fundraising events. As his public profile grew, so did his connection to Elon Musk. Though their interactions remained sporadic, they continued to check in periodically, exchanging updates and insights. During one such conversation, Musk posed a question that lingered in John's mind long after their call ended. "If you could design a program to help people like you," Musk asked, "what would it look like?" The question sparked a flurry of ideas. Drawing on his experiences, John envisioned a holistic initiative that addressed not only immediate needs like housing and healthcare, but also long-term goals such as career training, mental health support, and community integration. He sketched out a framework that combined practical resources with mentorship, emphasizing the importance of fostering resilience and self-efficacy. When he presented the concept to Musk, the billionaire responded enthusiastically, offering to fund a pilot program and connect John with experts who could help refine the model. Thus began a new chapter in John's journey, one defined by leadership and innovation. With Musk's backing, he launched the Second Chances Initiative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering individuals experiencing homelessness or economic hardship. The program quickly gained traction, attracting volunteers, donors, and participants eager to contribute to its mission. Success stories poured in, former addicts finding sobriety, single parents securing stable employment, veterans reintegrating into civilian life. Each triumph served as a testament to the power of collective effort and the transformative potential of belief. Yet for all the external achievements, the most significant changes occurred within John himself. Over time, he shed the weight of shame and regret that had burdened him for so long, replacing it with a sense of pride and possibility. He learned to forgive himself for past mistakes, recognizing them not as failures, but as lessons that had shaped his path. He reconnected with Sarah, his ex-wife, forging a tentative friendship built on mutual understanding and shared history. Though their romantic relationship remained firmly in the past, they found comfort in knowing they had weathered life's storms together and emerged stronger for it. Perhaps the most poignant moment came during a visit to the park where he had first met Elon Musk. Standing on the same bench where their fateful encounter had taken place, John reflected on how far he had come. The scars of his journey were still visible, the faint lines etched into his face, the slight tremor in his hands, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they served as reminders of his strength, his capacity to endure and overcome. As he gazed across the park, now bustling with activity, he spotted a man sitting alone on another bench, his posture slumped, his eyes hollow with despair. Without hesitation, John approached him, extending a hand and introducing himself. "Hi," he said warmly. "My name's John. Can we talk for a minute?" The man looked up, startled, then nodded cautiously. And so the cycle continued, a testament to the enduring power of human connection and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. Years passed, and John Carter's life bore little resemblance to the one he had lived when he first sat on that park bench, clutching a crumpled paper cup and wondering if anyone would notice if he disappeared. What began as a chance encounter with Elon Musk had blossomed into a journey of profound transformation, not just for John himself, but for countless others whose lives he touched along the way. The man who once felt invisible had become a beacon of hope, a living testament to the idea that even in the darkest moments, redemption is possible. By this point, the Second Chances Initiative had grown into a nationwide movement, with chapters in cities across the country and partnerships with organizations spanning multiple sectors. Its success was rooted in its holistic approach, addressing not only the immediate needs of participants, housing, healthcare, job training, but also the deeper emotional and psychological wounds that often accompany prolonged hardship. Under John's leadership, the program emphasized empowerment over charity, teaching individuals how to rebuild their lives with dignity and purpose. It wasn't about giving people fish. It was about showing them how to cast their own nets. John's role evolved alongside the initiative. No longer just a teacher or mentor, he became a spokesperson, an advocate, and a thought leader in the realm of social innovation. He spoke at conferences around the world, sharing his story and challenging audiences to rethink their assumptions about poverty, homelessness, and resilience. His speeches were equal parts raw honesty and inspiring vision, blending personal anecdotes with data-driven insights to drive home the message that systemic change requires both compassion and action. "We can't solve problems by ignoring them," he often said. "We have to lean into the discomfort, confront the realities, and ask ourselves what kind of future we want to create, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." One particularly memorable event took place at a global summit on sustainable development where John shared the stage with Elon Musk. The two men stood side by side, their contrasting backgrounds and journeys serving as a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of human experience. As Musk discussed the technological advancements needed to address climate change and resource scarcity, John highlighted the human element, the importance of ensuring that progress benefits all members of society, not just those already privileged enough to access it. Their dialogue underscored a central theme. Innovation without inclusivity is incomplete. After the presentation, A young journalist approached John during the networking session, her eyes wide with admiration. "Mr. Carter," she began hesitantly, "I know you've been asked this a million times, but how did you do it? How did you go from being homeless to standing here today?" John smiled, leaning back slightly as he considered the question. "You know," he replied after a moment, "I used to think my story was unique. Like somehow I'd hit rock bottom harder than anyone else, faced challenges no one could understand. But the truth is, there are millions of people out there struggling in ways I can't even imagine. The difference isn't in the struggle itself, it's in the opportunities we're given to rise above it." He paused, glancing briefly at Musk, who was engaged in conversation nearby. "For me, the turning point came when someone decided to see me, not as a statistic or a stereotype, but as a person with potential. That changed everything. It reminded me that I still had value, even when I couldn't see it myself. And once I started believing that, I realized I could help others believe it too." The journalist nodded, scribbling furiously in her notebook. "So what's next for you?" she asked. "Where do you go from here?" John chuckled softly, his gaze drifting toward the crowd of delegates mingling around them. "Honestly, I don't know. And that's okay. For so long I thought I needed a plan, a roadmap to follow. But life doesn't work like that. Sometimes you just have to take the next step and trust that the path will reveal itself." His answer resonated deeply, not only with the journalist, but also with those within earshot who stopped to listen. In a world obsessed with certainty and control, John's willingness to embrace uncertainty was refreshing, a reminder that growth often happens outside our comfort zones. As the years went on, John continued to expand the reach of the Second Chances Initiative, collaborating with governments, corporations, and grassroots organizations to scale its impact. One of its most innovative projects involved partnering with tech companies to develop AI-driven tools designed to identify individuals at risk of homelessness before they reached crisis points. By analyzing data such as eviction notices, medicals, bills, and employment records, the system flagged cases requiring intervention, enabling outreach teams to offer preemptive support. Early results showed promising reductions in homelessness rates in pilot cities, sparking interest from policymakers eager to replicate the model elsewhere. But perhaps the initiative's greatest legacy lay in the stories of its participants: the single mothers who returned to school and earned degrees, the veterans who launched small businesses, the former addicts who rebuilt relationships with estranged families. Each success story reinforced the belief that change was possible, not through grand gestures or sweeping reforms alone, but through consistent, compassionate effort. And at the heart of it all was John, quietly guiding, encouraging, and reminding everyone involved that they mattered. Amidst these accomplishments, John never lost sight of his roots. He made it a point to visit shelters and community centers regularly, sitting down with individuals who reminded him of his younger self. These interactions kept him grounded, reminding him of the fragility of stability and the importance of paying forward the kindness he had received. On one such visit, he encountered a teenager named Marcus, whose sharp wit and quick mind reminded him of his own early love for mathematics. Recognizing the boy's potential, John offered to tutor him privately, helping him navigate high school while exploring options for college scholarships. Years later, Marcus graduated at the top of his class, crediting John with changing the trajectory of his life. For Elon Musk, watching John's evolution from a man asking for $2 to a leader transforming communities was nothing short of inspiring. Though their paths diverged as their respective responsibilities grew, they remained connected by a shared commitment to creating opportunities where none seemed to exist. During a rare quiet moment, Musk reflected on their journey together, marveling at the unpredictability of fate. "When I met John," he told a close associate, "I saw someone who hadn't given up despite everything life had thrown at him. Helping him wasn't just about giving him a second chance, it was about proving that second chances are worth fighting for." Their final meeting occurred at a formal gala, honoring innovators in education and social justice. Dressed in a tailored suit, John walked confidently across the stage to accept an award for his contributions to community development. As he scanned the audience, his eyes locked onto Musk, seated near the front row. Their gazes met, and for a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. Without words, they communicated volumes, an unspoken acknowledgement of the journey they had traveled together. In his acceptance speech, John took a moment to publicly thank Musk, not for the material assistance he had provided, but for the belief he had instilled. "Elon didn't just give me money or resources," John said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "He gave me something far more valuable: faith. Faith in myself, faith in the possibility of change, and faith in the power of connection. And for that, I'll always be grateful." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing throughout the ballroom like a collective affirmation of hope. As John stepped off stage, Musk greeted him with a firm handshake and a nod of approval. For both men, the moment served as a reminder of why they had embarked on this journey in the first place: to prove that even in a world rife with division and despair, connection and compassion could still prevail. As the evening drew to a close, John found himself standing on the balcony of the venue, gazing out at the city skyline illuminated by twinkling lights. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint hum of distant traffic and laughter spilling from nearby streets. Beside him, Musk joined silently, leaning against the railing as they both absorbed the view. "You know," Musk said after a while, breaking the comfortable silence, "this whole thing started with a simple question. $2. Who would have thought it could lead to all this?" John chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Life has a funny way of surprising us," he replied. "Sometimes the smallest gestures can spark the biggest changes." Musk nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about the money, though. Never was. It's about seeing potential where others might overlook it. About believing in people, even when they've stopped believing in themselves." John turned to look at him, gratitude shining in his eyes. "And that's exactly what you did for me. You reminded me that I still had something to offer, that I still mattered." They stood there for a few more minutes, letting the weight of their shared experiences settle between them. Then, as if by mutual agreement, they headed back inside, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. This story of John Carter and Elon Musk isn't just about one man's rise from homelessness or another's act of generosity. It's about the ripple effects of kindness, the transformative power of belief, and the enduring truth that every life holds untapped potential. It's a reminder that we are all connected, bound together by our humanity, and that the choices we make, no matter how small, can shape the course of countless lives, because in the end, it's not wealth or fame that defines us. It's the courage to reach out, to listen, to care. It's the willingness to see beyond appearances and recognize the spark of possibility in everyone we meet. And it's the understanding that no matter where we come from or what we've been through, we all deserve a second chance.